بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة بوجهه الكريم. I praise Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. I thank Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. I ask him to send countless blessings and salutations on Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all those who follow them in righteousness until the day of judgment. And I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to grant us the sincere intention. I want to start off by reminding you of a statement of our author, Al-Habib Al-Imam Abdullah ibn Hussein ibn Tahir radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa nafa'na bi ilmihi fi ad-darain. He said to his student, giving him advices, and let's see if we remember who was one of the main students of our author, Habib Abdullah bin Hussein bin Tahir, who was one of his main students, and I told you about him already in our chain of narration to the author, who was the main student of Habib Abdullah bin Hussein bin Tahir. Let's get our brains moving first thing in the morning, inshallah. And I remind you of the statement of the scholars in mentioning the pious, the mercy of Allah descends. In the dhikr salihin tanzilu rahmah, right? So we have a benefit there. Naam, Sayyidina Isa, but you should put some respect on his name. So what should you say before Aidarus? Wa alaykum salam, Imam of the Boom Bap. So come on, Isa, or others. Habib Umar bin Aidarus, Habib Aidarus bin Umar, MashaAllah. When did he die? What year? What year did Habib Aidarus bin Umar al-Habshi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu die? 1314. And what was he known as? What was his title? What was he known as? Subhanallah. Come on. No one? Come on. You know, our teacher, he used to do this so we didn't ask questions. MashaAllah. Yeah, it's not musnad, it's musnid with an I. So the musnid of Hadramaut, yes. not the Mufti of Mecca, the Musnid of Hadramaut. With an I, he says, so retype it, inshallah, and I'll share it. That gives you the student Wookie button. He is very significant sheikh and scholar, Aydurus al-Habib Aydurus bin Umar al-Habshi. In fact, I named my son after him, and after al-Aydurus al-Akbar, Abdullah bin Abi Bakr al-Aydurus. They called him al-Aydurus Akbar. So you got al-Aydurus Akbar, Abdullah, the son of Abu Bakr, and then you have many Ayduruses, but among the famous, al-Habib Aydurus bin Umar, right, who was the Musnid of Hadramaut. So one time, Habib Abdullah bin Hussein bin Tahir, our author, was giving his student, Habib Aydurus bin Umar, some advice. And he said to him that it is not an abundance of advice and knowledge that is holding us back. That's not our problem, that we don't have enough advices, wasaya, and we have knowledge and we have advices. People tell us what to do. He said, what is holding us back is practicing al-amal, doing what we are advised and what we learn. So we're getting the advice, we're getting the knowledge, but are we doing it? So that advice is something I want us to reflect upon. That our problem is not that we don't have enough information and advice is what to do and knowledge and learning available. We have it. What is holding us back from traveling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala successfully is not implementing the advice and not implementing the knowledge. So anytime you have knowledge without practice, it won't benefit you, right? So we have to implement what we learn. What we are advised, we have to implement it. And the greatest advice that was given to us by the Prophet ﷺ is to fear Allah, to have a taqwa, to obey Allah inwardly and outwardly. And if we can do that, our whole code, 3453, is showing us how to have a taqwa. Is an expansion of the meanings of a taqwa. So let us be people of a taqwa. Let us be those who hold to the way of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah inwardly and outwardly. That we are people of the correct creed. We are people of sound, valid religious practice. And we are people of thriving spiritual states. May Allah allow us to accomplish that. Inshallah, we'll continue with our reading. We reached up to page 41 in the book Sulam at-Tawfiq, The Ladders to Success in Truly Loving Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Let us recite Al-Fatiha to the soul of the author, Al-Habib Abdullah bin Hussein bin Tahir Ba'alawi. Al-Fatiha. Yes, go ahead.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, said, the conditions for purification and the essential elements of dry ablution.
So we talked about how to make a tahara. We talked about an aspect of removing a najaasah in terms of istinja, right? So As we said, in every act of worship, you have conditions, integrals, and invalidators. So for the act of worship of at-tahara, purification, there are shurut, conditions. So the author is going to mention, since we know how to make al-wudu, we know it invalidates al-wudu, we know how to make al-ghusl, we know it invalidates al-ghusl, we learned how to make al-istinja, and we know what is necessary to make istinja. What are the conditions that must be fulfilled so those acts would be valid? Now,
The conditions for purification are 1 through 2. The individual being a Muslim and having discernment.
so al-Islam wa tamyiz, that we mentioned, in order for one's ablution, or one's purgatory bath to be valid, one must be Muslim. Now,
Number 3.
and at tamyiz, at the age of mental discernment. So it is the non-mumayyiz person, their tahara is not valid in terms of fulfilling those acts, though we train them to be pure. Now,
Number 3. The absence of anything that prevents water from reaching what is being washed.
mm,
Number 4. The water flowing.
yes.
Number
So
5.
this is something that when one washes, one should ensure that the water flows over the limb. So one doesn't just have moist hands and puts it on one's limbs. One lets the water flow. Now,
Number 5. The water being purifying by not having lost its name through mixing with a pure substance that water does not need.
and that
And
water that mixed with a pure substance, that the water can be prevented from mixing with it. If that mixture happens, that water becomes pure but not purifying. And the origin of all water is pure, right? So when we say water, we mean that which comes from the sky or that which comes from the earth. From its original source, that water is pure and purifying. If it is mixed with a pure substance that it can be protected from, then it becomes pure, not purifying, if it is below kullatan. Now, go ahead.
and by not changing due to filth, even a slight change. When the water is less than
So if the
kullatain,
water is less than kullatan, just coming into contact with a najis or a filthy thing, Islamically we consider filth, we talked about that, then that water would become filthy, not pure, filthy, and it cannot be used. Now,
when the water is less than kullatain, approximately 216 liters or 57.1 gallons,
so
200
kullatan in the Shafi'i school is that medium measure of water by which we consider water a little or a lot. If the water is less than kullatayn, it is considered a little. If it is kullatayn or more, it's considered a lot. So when we talk about water in the Shafi'i school, we're always going to talk about a little water or a lot of water. Now,
2 conditions for it to be purifying are added. A. It
should
not
we say to remain purifying? Because water in its origin is purifying if it comes from its original sources. So how would it remain in that state? 2 conditions must be met. Now,
A. It not encountering inexcusable filth, and B. It not having been used in lifting the state of impurity or in removing filth.
so
Whoever
this water less than kullatayn, we said, right? It doesn't encounter a filth, and it wasn't used to lift the state of ritual impurity or to remove an najasa. When it's kullatayn, less than kullatayn. As for more than kullatayn, so long as it doesn't change, then the water is still pure and purifying. Now,
Whoever does not find water or its use would harm him makes dry ablution after the time has entered and after removing inexcusable filth and knowing the direction of prayer.
So here is the issue of a tayammum. Since we're talking about water, when we're talking about kulatan and we're talking about a tahara, al-wudu and al-ghusl, then we're talking about water. So what if the case happens that one doesn't have water or would be harmed by using water, meaning it's not available, one cannot reach it, or one would be harmed? In the sacred law, we have a dispensation for such a case, which is called at-tayammum, which is dry purification. So the condition and able to perform dry ablution, among them is the entrance of the prayer's time, to remove any najaasah that is not excused, and to know the direction of the prayer. Now,
Dry ablution is performed by applying unadulterated soil or sand that is purifying and contains dirt to the face, including
let's read that again. Read it again.
Dry ablution is performed by applying unadulterated soil or sand that is purifying and contains dirt to the face.
Here, let's reword that a little. So it is performed by turab, which means dirt, right? Or some sand that is pure, right? It's unmixed, meaning pure, meaning unmixed. It's not mixed with something else. It isn't dirt and something else. And it's pure, purifying, meaning it hasn't been affected by najaasah, right? So it's not mixed, it's pure soil, right? It hasn't been affected by najaasah, like urine, for instance, or blood. It hasn't been affected by that. Lahu ghubar, and it has dust. So that means if you struck it with your hand, dust would come from it. Pure beach sand cannot be used for a tayammum. Why? Because it doesn't have dust. The pure sand on the beach, it doesn't have dust, so it cannot be used. So when it says that dirt, it has to have dust. You know, if you have the ground and you bang or pat on it, dust will come up. This is what is used for a tayammum. In the Shafi'i school. In other schools, they have other rules. We're not talking about them at this point. We're talking about in the Shafi'i school. Now, go ahead.
Including the nose and the entire beard and hands. Did you want me to read it again from the beginning?
Okay, no. You apply that to the face, meaning the nose is a part of the face. You must wipe it, and the beard. Okay.
And hands up to and including the elbows.
Right.
In that order.
So that means there's a tartib here. There's a sequence. One wipes the face with the dirt, and the face is from the normal headline to the chin and left, and from one earlobe to other earlobe. So this whole area, one wipes with pure soil, and then one wipes one's hands up to and including the elbows. Now,
with 2 strikes at minimum.
So the first one hits the ground or the soil, and then one wipes the face. And the second one hits the ground, strikes the ground again, and one wipes one's hands and arms up to and including the elbows. So it must be 2 strikes to do that. Now,
while intending to render prayer permissible, with the intention concurrent with transporting the soil and wiping the first part of the face.
Here, a very important part. He said, Biniyati istibahati fardi salah. You are making the intention to make salah permissible. In other words, a tayammum does not lift the state of ritual impurity. So if one is in a state of al-hadath al-asghar or al-hadath al-akbar, one makes a tayammum to make salat permissible, but one religiously is still in the state of ritual impurity, but a tayammum is a dispensation to allow you to pray because of the absence or the inability to use water. However, when that absence of water is removed or the inability to use water is removed, then one must make al-wudu or al-ghusl. One cannot remain in the state of a tayammum and use that as I was pure. No, soon as the water is available or one is able to use it, one must make al-ghusl or ablution or al-wudu. Because a tayammum does not lift the state of ritual impurity. It is only a dispensation. Now,
what is unlawful due to minor and other ritual
and
impurities?
here, the tayammum, is only valid for one obligatory prayer. So when one takes this dispensation of a tayammum, and there are rules to it, and we're going to learn them, right? We'll talk about them in more details later, because I want you to know there's conditions for that. And there is some rules that need to be adhered to, that some people make a tayammum in places they're not allowed to make a tayammum. So we're going to talk about that later, inshallah, in more details. But one tayammum for one obligatory prayer. So if you make a tayammum for Fajr, mathalan, as an example, then when Dhuhr comes in, you need to make another tayammum, right? As for the optional prayers, between that, one can pray as many as one would like with that one tayammum. Now,
What is unlawful due to minor and other ritual impurities? It is unlawful for someone whose ablution is invalidated, 1, to perform
this
the
is the
prayer.
one who is muhdith. The one who is muhdith, that person, meaning their wudu was nullified. So in addition that they're in a state of impurity, ritual impurity, there are certain things that are unlawful for them to do while they're in that state. Among them,
Number 2, circumambulate the Kaaba. And number 3, to carry a printed Quran. And
and
4,
when we say printed Quran, we mean al-Mushaf, right? The book of al-Quran in the Arabic language, or the book which is mostly al-Quran, and it may have some footnotes or something. If it's mostly Quran, it is unlawful to carry it while in a state of minor ritual impurity. Now,
number 4, to touch it even with a barrier, except a minor for the sake of study, in which case it is permissible to allow him to carry it and touch it despite his ritual impurity.
so now the author is going to talk about, so these 4 things is for the one who's in a state of minor ritual impurity, right? He's in al-hadath al-asghar, that state. Now, what about the one that's in al-hadath al-akbar? Everything that is impermissible, unlawful to do when one is in a state of minor ritual impurity is unlawful for the one in major state of ritual purity, in addition to other things that are going to be mentioned here. Now,
And it is unlawful for someone with ritual impurity related to intercourse, 1 through 4, to do those preceding 4 things. Number 5, to read the Quran with vocalization. And number 6,
meaning to utter the words of the Quran. As for having the words in one's heart, so one does not utter, but one is having the Quran in one's heart, so one reciting Al-Fatiha or in the heart, no words, this is valid. But if one utters the words with the intention of recital, this is haram.
Number 6, to remain in a mosque, but not to pass through it.
And if one felt, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
And
The
it is
mosque here, I should mention, the masjid here means that place that was dedicated for being a masjid. As for just a place where people gather to pray and it's not designated for a masjid, then that place, this rule does not apply. It is recommended, though, not to be there in a state of junub.
And it is unlawful for a woman during menstruation and postpartum bleeding, 1 through 6, to do those preceding 6 things.
Yes.
7, to fast before menstruation or postpartum bleeding ceases. And number 8, to enable her husband to enjoy what is between her navel and her knees via intercourse, even with a barrier, or touching without a barrier, even without lust, before the legally defined washing.
So you just pick these. You got the case. What is prohibited to do when in a state of minor ritual impurity? What is prohibited to do in a state of major ritual impurity? And lastly, for the woman who is in menstruation or postpartum bleeding, what is unlawful for her to do? So whenever you want to those things that are unlawful to do in the state of ritual impurity, whether minor or major, or menstruation or postpartum bleeding, you can separate it into those things. What is unlawful for minor ritual while in the state of minor ritual impurity? What is unlawful in addition to that in the state of major impurity? And what is unlawful in addition to that if one is in a state of menstruation as a woman or postpartum bleeding? Now, go ahead.
Removing filth.
So here, now the author is going to talk more details about izalatun najasa, removing a najasa. So we learned some of it when we were talking about al-istinja, because al-istinja, one of the things we have to do after going to the lavatory is remove the najasa, which is any wet thing that comes out of the eliminatory outlets. So we learned about using tissue or using water. Here, this is talking about najasa in other locations besides the najasa that comes out of oneself. Here, so the author is going to talk about removing a najasa is a condition of the prayer. And we talked about at-tahara, and Islam emphasizes at-tahara, purification. We said that at-tahara is lifting the state of ritual impurity, removing the najasa, or what has its form or its meaning. Now, go ahead.
Among the
Keep the
conditions,
definition in your mind of tahara, purification, lifting the state of ritual impurity, removing filth and najasa, or what has its form or has its meaning. And that definition, we're going to talk about it later when we get in more advanced books. We're going to expand on that definition. So keep that part of the definition in your mind. Now,
among the conditions of prayer is being purified from filth located on body, clothing, place, and whatever he carries, like a bottle or napkin in his hands or a pocket.
so for a condition of the prayer is freeing, being pure from any najasa on one's body, on one's clothing, on the place that you pray. So you can't pray on najasa, right? So if the place is najas, you cannot pray in that place. And what one carries in the prayer. Now,
If filth touches him, his clothing, or whatever he carries, his prayer is invalidated, unless he discards it, the filth or the filthy article, immediately, or it is excusable, like blood from his wounds.
without carrying the najasa, so he can't pick it up, this would invalidate. He needs to knock it off. So he would shake it, for instance.
It
Because
is
if it's wet, then he has to remove the thing. If it's dry, he can remove it.
It is obligatory to remove inexcusable filth.
And
Physical
this
filth.
is a whole nother class to know what types of najasa, to know the types of najasa, and then to learn those that are excusable, which is a lot of cases. Inshallah, they have separate books just for excusable filth. And scholars have written books about that. Now,
Physical filth is removed by removing the substance, its taste, color, smell, and volume with purifying water.
let me see. Hold on. You have two types of najasa. Let me give them to you quickly. Hold on. Here's my thing. So we can just have this real quick. You have, and just memorize these terms. An-najasa al-ayniyya. And an-najasa al-hukmiyya. All right. Allah. Right? So write these two down. So an-najasa is basically of two types. And we can divide it into more when we get later. We're going to have more divisions. But for right now, at this stage, I want you to just get these two types. You have an-najasa al-ayniyya, which is the physical filth. And then you have an-najasa al-hukmiyya, and we can say for that, he'll use this term, legal filth. The difference between an-najasa al-ayniyya and an-najasa al-hukmiyya is one, you can see the physical substance of the najasa. You can physically see it. So it's the ayn of the najasa is visible. You can perceive it. So if you had blood, right, you can see the blood. If you had vomit, you can see the vomit. So this is ayniyya. It's physical. You can see it. Al-hukmiyya is that you know it's present, but its signs may not be perceivable. So you might not see it, you might not smell it, right? But or its taste, but it's there. You know it's there, so you still have to remove it. Is this clear? That's a question, so I want to make sure before I go on. Is these two terms clear for everyone? Hamza, I love you. I didn't know you was 14. I didn't see your post. May Allah reward you. May Allah give your father health. May Allah help your family and protect all of you. May Allah increase you in knowledge and make you among the pious. And we will keep your father, Abu Yasin, in our dua regularly, inshallah ta'ala, that Allah gives him afiyah. Okay, good. Okay, so these are the two types of najasa. So the first is the physical najasa, and we said we must remove a najasa for the purity of for the validity of the prayer. So what about an najasatul ayniyya? How do we remove it? That's the first one. Go ahead.
Legal filth, i.e.,
Go back to the physical filth, please.
sorry, physical filth Is removed by removing the substance, its taste, color, smell, and volume with purifying water.
So whenever we talk about the physical filth, you have to remove the ayn. So that physical filth that you see, you got to remove it, right? And Allahumma salli ala. You remove the ayn, meaning its taste, its color, and its smell, with purifying water. So that when you got the substance of the najasa, it must be removed with pure water. Now, not mixed water. So you don't take water and mix it with soap to a soapy water. It's no longer termed water, because that water is what? Pure, not purifying. So if you got blood, you got to clean that with pure water, right? You can't just put soapy water on it that is not water, pure, and then use that to remove it. If you cleaned it prior with soapy water, then that spot you still got to purify with pure water, because the soapy water is tahir, not mutahir. It's pure but not purifying. So it got to be unmixed water. Go ahead.
Legal filth, i.e., what does not
So
have.
soap powder won't suffice. So if you got blood on your clothes and you just put, let it get in soap powder without purifying water, that's not going to suffice. So even before you do it, you should wash it with pure water itself. Now,
Legal filth, i.e., what does not have a perceivable volume, color, taste, and smell, e.g., a dry drop of urine, is removed by flowing purifying water over it a single time.
right, because you cannot perceive it, so you just pour the water over it, and that pouring of the water over the area would be sufficient. You don't have to remove the substance because you can't perceive it.
Canine filth,
Now,
including
canine filth. I like this. I like this term. It's the filth of the dog. So these are two more terms I'm going to give you. So after you get that, then there's two other types of najasa, and Najaasah al-Kalbiyyah, and Najaasah al-Khinsiriyyah. Allah. Al-Khinsiriyyah. So the khinzir of the pig. So you have Allah. I'm sorry. You have the najasa of the pig and the dog, right? These are two types of najasa. So the author mentions this najasa is considered a heavy najasa. So if you look at najasa al-ayniyah, it's a middle form of a najasa. Najasa al-hukmiyah is a light form of the najasa. Najasa al-kalbiyyah and khinsiriyyah, is that supposed to be a Z? Sorry, that should be a Z, not an S. I'm sorry. That should be a Z instead of a S. Khinziriyyah. Not an S, a Z. Now, so it's Khinsiriyyah. Those two types of Najaasah, the pig of the dog, they are heavy Najaasah and they're cleaned in a different way. Go ahead. And the author mentions them.
Canine filth, including filth from dogs, pigs, and their offspring. It applies equally to their body, what they lap with their tongues, their sweat, their blood, and others, i.e., not just what their tongue touches, is
So
removed.
any moisture that comes in contact with the dog, any of their parts that have become wet or moist, if you come in contact with that type of Najaasah has affected your body, your place where you pray, your clothing, then you have to remove it a certain way. Now,
It is removed by washing it 7 times with purifying water. One of the times mixed with i.e. turbot from soil. The attempt that removes the substance, even if it takes several tries, is a single time, i.e. a single washing. It is
here, so you must take that water, mix it with pure soil, and the wash that removes the ayn of that Najaasah, the substance of the Najaasah, is counted as one. And then you mix it, you wash it 6 more times. Any of its part that becomes moist. So if its nose touches you, that's moist, then that would count. If you just touched the dog's hair that wasn't wet or didn't become moist, you just brush it off. It doesn't affect. But if the dog is wet, or if the nose of the dog or the dog moisture touches you, or any of its parts that become moist, then in this case, it would be an Najaasah Kalbiyyah, and you have to remove it this way. Now, go ahead.
It is a condition for purification from filth that the water travel over the filth. If the water
just for those who are afflicted, I don't want to drive people crazy. If one was in a place where one was unavoidable to avoid the dog, I would suggest one follow the Maliki school in these issues of tahara and prayer. Why? Because in the Maliki school, they don't consider this as an obligation. They consider it as a recommended matter, right? So, and it's details in that madhab, which I don't know, but I know for sure that the rules of the Najaasah of the dog are different in the Maliki school, much easier than the other schools. So if one was in such a, and could not avoid the dog and all the problems of the dog, I would suggest to go in the Maliki school and learn the rules of Tahara and Salat and apply the rules of that madhab in that situation. So, I mean, and you can follow the Shafi'i school and other things. It's valid. But in that case of Tahara and Salat, if you were in that situation and you could not avoid it, then you need to learn the rules according to that school.
It is a condition for
As
purifying.
long as your act of worship is valid according to one of the 4 schools, it's okay. And let me give you a general saying of the scholars in relation to this issue. They said there is a term al-ami, right? Which is, al-ami is the layman, the common person. They said al-ami laysa lahu madhab. The common person doesn't have an actual madhab. The common person follows the school of the scholar who gives them the legal judgment. So you don't have to say, none of us, like I'm really not a Shafi'i. in the technical sense. I follow some rules according to the Shafi'i school. But because I haven't encompassed the entire madhab and understand it, then I'm not really counted as a Shafi'i. I'm a common person who happens to follow the Shafi'i school in some rules. Right? So the only reason I'm Shafi'i, because I had Shafi'i teachers. And after I learned the madhab, that's what I knew, that's what I stuck with, and that's when I ever had questions, I had teachers that could answer that. Had I been in a situation where it was Hanafi teachers, I would be Hanafi, or Maliki, or Hanbali, with the correct creed though. Okay, go ahead.
It is a condition for purification from filth that the water travel over the filth if the water is a small
I'm
amount.
sorry. If you had questions of what I covered, please, let's stop here. Wait a minute. Go ahead, read it again. Go ahead.
It is a condition for purification from filth that the water travel over the filth if the water is a small amount, i.e. less than kulatain.
Right. Here, and we'll stop there. If the water, so we want to remove an Najaasah, right, is a condition for that the water is poured over the Najaasah and not the Najaasah is put in the water. If the water is little, what means little? When we say the water is little, what is intended by that? I told you already. So if the water is a little bit of water, it's a condition that the water is poured over the Najaasah and the Najaasah is not put in the water. What do we determine a little bit of water? That's a question. What is considered in the Shafi'i school a little bit of water? If no answers, what is considered less than kulatain? Right. So whenever the water is less than kulatain, then that water is considered a little water. So if you take something that is affected with Najaasah and you put it in the water that is less than kulatain, that water will become najas. So if you have less than kulatain, you have to pour the water over the Najaasah. If the water is kulatain or more, you can put the Najaasah in there. So long as it doesn't change its color, taste, and smell, it's still pure. Because there is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, whenever water reaches kulatain, it is not affected by filth. Now, so that's the end of that. Inshallah, we'll stop there and I'll take questions related to what we're talking about. So I want to preface everything for all of you. I don't know. So I am not a mufti. So ask me what about what we talked about. Other than what we talked about, I may not be able to answer. If I can help you, I'll help you. But I don't like to open up a session of legal verdicts. I am not a mufti. Can you repeat the two rules for a canine? If the part of the dog, canine, becomes any of their moist parts or the hair that has become moist or wet touches you, then you need to wash that area 7 times, one mix with pure soil. That is that. No, the water so that's used after wudu is pure, and so is the water after ghusl is pure, but it's not purifying. So it's pure, but you can't lift the state. You can't use it twice. It's called mal musta'mal. It's use water, so you can't use it again for lifting the state of hadath or removing a najasa. But it's pure. You can use it. You could drink it. You could use it for cleaning, but not for lifting najasa or removing removing a najasa. My cousin recently got a dog to help with her depression. Yes, and firstly, I would refer to Hanafi scholars to see what's in that madhab about the issue in her situation. And if not, just learn the Maliki madhab. For this issue, you don't got to learn the whole madhab. Learn it for Tahara and Salah. So that, because you're going to pray, right? So you need to follow the rules of prayer to make sure you don't invalidate the rules of prayer, because, you got to have Tahara to pray. So in Tahara and Salah, learn that area, just the obligations. You don't got to go in detail, so that you could fulfill your act of worship, and Allah knows best. I don't encourage people to mix madhahib. However, if you follow one school in one subject or one issue and another school in another issue, this is valid. So long as the conditions, the integrals and the envoy, the long as the conditions and integrals are fulfilled and the invalidators are avoided, it's valid. So you could pay zakat according to the Hanafi school and fast according to the Maliki school, and perform Hajj according to the Hanbali school and pray according to the Shafi school. Okay, may Allah guide you and make Islam beneficial for you. I won't throw you out until you keep going. So you said you hate Islam. May you stick around good Muslims and learn to love Islam. Shango. But please don't put anything else like that. Well, you're already blocked. Maybe Shango might have changed his mind. Let's not pull the trigger so fast. MashaAllah. Imam, in terms of pure water from the sky and earth, would lake water, pond, and creek water count as water to make wudu? Yes, it's valid. When we go to another book, we're going to talk about that in more detail. Kalbiyyah is the dog. Kalbiyyah is dog. And Khinsiriyyah, with one R, not two, one R, is the pig. Zamzam is purifying water. It is pure and purifying. Naam. The filth of the Najaasah Kalbiyyah is the filth of a dog, and Najaasah Khinsiriyyah is the filth of a pig. Not in the Shafi'i school, no. You cannot use dust that's around a house to make a tayammum. Not in the Shafi'i school. Tayyib, barakallahu bikum wa jazakum Allahu. Oh, let me answer that. What do we mean? Yes, he said, did you just say that us common people don't have to follow a certain school? No, that's not what I said. I said that you are not, as a common person, considered following a specific school in terms of, I'm a Shafi'i. So all the rules of the Shafi'i school, I know them, I know what they are, and I'm enrolled, so to say, in that school. Most common people are not like that. They don't know, they only know certain parts of the school. So they don't know the rules of the Shafi'i school. As far as your acts of worship, you must follow a school of the valid 4 schools, the accepted 4 schools. So when I say that you don't have to follow a specific school, meaning in all the rules of the sacred law, it is valid to follow as long as you don't mix the cases more than one school, especially as a common person, because you may not have all access to all the rules of the Shafi'i school. So if I ask you the rules of buying and selling in the Shafi'i school, most likely the common person won't know that. So if he says, okay, I'm in a place, I don't know the rules, but there's Hanafi people that can teach me the rules, then you got to go learn them, right? Or if there's Maliki people, you got to go learn the rules of buying and selling according to the Maliki school, because you must perform the acts of worship in a valid way. So therefore, you must follow a school. However, you're not required to follow one particular school in every single issue. Is that clear, Abdul Batin? Is it clear? Because I'm not saying don't follow a madhab. You must follow a madhab as a common person. You have no choice. You're not a mujtahid, so you have to follow a madhab. That doesn't necessitate that you follow the same madhab in every single legal case. If you learn that, that's great. You follow one school, then you're enrolled in the school. But if you didn't learn that, you cannot say, oh, I'm Shafi'i, so we have this a lot. I'll give you an example in my area. We have people who are a lot of immigrants and some African Americans. And they say, I'm Hanafi. But they don't know the rules of the religion according to the Hanafi school. They don't know the ahkam of tahara. They don't know ahkam of salat, not ahkam of zakat, not ahkam of hajj, not ahkam of psalm, not the rulings of prayer, fasting, zakat, hajj. They don't know the rules according to not the Hanafi school. They just say I'm Hanafi because I pray with my hands below my navel. That's it. They don't know anything about the Hanafi school. This is not valid. This is not valid. You must learn the school. What do we say learn the school? In any act of worship, you must learn its conditions, its obligatory parts, its integrals, and avoid its invalidators at minimum. For every legal ruling, whatever you do, it's unlawful to perform an act of worship in an invalid manner. So if you didn't learn the rules, it's invalid. You can't say I'm Hanafi, so they won't come learn. There's someone teaching Shafi'i fiqh. They don't know Hanafi fiqh. They don't have a teacher. And they say, I don't come to that because I'm Hanafi. You're not Hanafi. You're a common person. You need to sit down and learn the rules, right? So that's a mistake. I'm Hanafi. My mom and dad was Hanafi. But you don't know the rules of the religion. You don't even know one Hanafi book. How are you Hanafi? No, and I literally mean I'm not picking on the Hanafis. I got a lot of black people. I'm Maliki because I'm black. I like to follow my African ancestors. But you don't learn the madhab. You don't know the rules. How are you a Maliki? Likewise, if it was Shafi, so don't think I'm picking on no one else. You got to learn the rules. That's the point. Not to say I follow this school or that school. I'm performing the acts of worship in a valid way. Every act of worship, you got to perform it in a valid way. that is accepted and valid according to one of those 4 recognized schools. That's it. The idea of nothing. So good. I hope that's clear. Say you're Maliki and you know the way to make wudu, but you prefer the Shafi way. Is that wrong? So long as you perform it in the valid manner, following its, fulfilling all its conditions, fulfilling all of the integrals, and avoiding the invalidators, is valid. It's valid. That's the point. Please understand that point. Following a madhab is not saying one's better than the other. Do your act of worship right. The madhab is to ensure that you perform the act of worship in a valid manner. And it's taken from qualified mujtahid scholars. Whatever madhab among the 4 accepted madhabs, that is valid. That's the point. To perform your acts of worship in a valid manner. It's not about what madhab you follow. It's that you follow a madhab in a valid way, not just by saying I'm a Shafi'i. If I don't do the rules right, I'm not Shafi'i. I am deluded, right? So don't be deluded, right? No, we must teach people the rules. So that's why we're going over these rules. And all you got to do is examine. Now you have enough tools to discover if a person knows how to follow a madhab correctly. You know there are integrals, right? You know conditions. You know in the Shafi school, you learn some. You know the integrals of al-wudu. You know the integrals of al-ghusl. You know the invalidators of wudu. You know the invalidators of al-ghusl. You know how to make istinja. You know how to remove an-najaasah. You learned all these things down in the Shafi school. Then you compare to your school. If you say I'm Maliki, okay, what are the integrals of wudu in the Maliki school? What are the invalidators of wudu in the Maliki school? What are the integrals of al-ghusl? What are the invalidators of ghusl? What are the conditions of tahara? What are the conditions of ablution? What are the conditions of ghusl? What are the conditions of prayer? How do you make a tayammum? How do you make an istinja according to the Maliki school, or the Hanafi, or the Hanbali? If you don't know, then you need to be Shafi'i for that case until you learn. You see how simple it is? Is this clear for everyone? Because I don't want to walk away saying something I didn't say. Is it clear? Is it clear for everyone? Is it clear without the shots being fired? I know we like to fire shots and have fun, but I want to make sure the case is clear. So when anyone comes tell you, I don't follow a madhab, I follow Quran and Sunnah, get far away from that person. So when he says, no, I don't follow no madhab, I follow Quran and Sunnah, that means he don't know what he's doing. Don't follow him. So if you got that part, so I don't want nobody to think that, I follow Quran and Sunnah. No, that means you don't perform your acts of worship validly. You don't know what you're doing. You think you're a mujtahid and you're not. And please don't mix us. You must follow a madhab. Not you should, not it's better. No, you must follow a madhab. Either you're a mujtahid or a muqallid. Let me address this. I'm sorry for going a little over. You have 2 types of people, mujtahid and muqallid. We talked about this already for some who was in the classes, right? Essential, you got 2 people. Either you're a mujtahid, you're qualified to deduce legal rulings from the primary Islamic sources, and there's conditions for that, which none of us, I'm quite sure, meet. I don't even have to guess. No one on this thing meets the conditions of ijtihad. No doubt about it. And if they do, you are a super humble person to sit and listen to me. And please make dua for me, because mashallah, I must be doing something right for you to be sitting listening to me. If you're a mujtahid, right? And overlook my shortcomings and mistakes. But really, we're not mujtahidun. So all of us are muqallid. That means we must follow a mujtahid. Therefore, we all got to follow a madhab. Those extra details I'm giving you is just how you properly follow a madhab, right? But this idea of, oh, you have a choice. No, you don't have a choice. If you're not a mujtahid, you must follow a madhab. And I know a lot of these guys walk around thinking they're mujtahidun and they just don't use the word. They don't say I'm a mujtahid. They say I follow Quran and Sunnah, which means I'm a mujtahid. Because if you don't follow a madhab, that means you're deducing your own rulings. And I don't know where you get those conditions from that you meet it. So this is a problem. And don't take it as a bad way. Most of our people don't even know these terms. They don't even know that all these rules are related to the religion. Because they've been told, just follow Quran and Sunnah, and that's all you need. They don't know. So don't get mad at people when they say that. If you can gently correct them and teach them. If you can, make dua. Because our people have been hoodwinked and duped with half-truths. So we don't know. I mean, and not just us, others too. It's spread all around the world, not following the madhab. So just be patient, inshallah. Be patient. I've got my warning to stop. MashaAllah. Barakallahu bikum. Make dua for me, inshallah. I will keep you in my dua as well. Jazakumullahu khaira wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Inshallah, we'll see you. What is today? We'll see you tomorrow morning, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.